Hello everyone, my name is Stewart, and 8 weeks ago I started my self-directed learning project. So I'm doing my self-directed learning assignment on how adults learn a second language, where I guided myself into figuring out exactly how it is adults learn a secondary language. Today, I think I finally figured out the answer to that question. So when I started this process, I started online, and the main thing that I found was that the difference between adults and children learning secondary languages is that adults often are exposed to a language less. Children tend to be exposed to a secondary language far more often, and they have less responsibilities typically and less things to worry about, so that they can focus more on just learning the language, while adults tend to have a lot of external factors affecting their learning as well. So it's not that adults don't learn languages as easy as children, it's just that children tend to have more time and more exposure to whatever language they have to learn. So as a result of this, adults learn secondary languages differently than children. And the main way to make it easier for adults to learn a second language is by just simply being committed and by really trying to immerse themselves into the world of whatever language they want to learn. A huge reason for why I decided to choose learning a secondary language for my self-directed learning project is because I myself am trying to learn how to speak Spanish. And I find that the main issue that I have with learning the language is that it's really hard for me to understand what I'm hearing when people that can natively speak the language speak it. It's a really fast language, and I have difficulties picking on and understanding keywords. So I decided to start this journey to figure out exactly what it is that's blocking me from learning, and see if I can get through that and come out on the other side as, someone that can speak Spanish. So from all the research that I've conducted, there are 5 main things that I saw that helped people learn a secondary language. Number 1 was being committed. You really, really have to commit the time to your secondary language and immerse yourself into it daily if you're going to learn it. This also means immersing yourself into not just the language itself, but the world of the language. So try learning songs and watching movies, watching TV shows, other things like that. Maybe try reading news, podcasts, audiobooks, the list goes on. That way you begin to pick up more patterns and things like that. Second most important thing is to use every learning method possible. This means reading it, speaking it, listening to it, thinking in it, literally everything possible. You can listen to songs, childhood fables, memorize poems, read newspapers, anything like that, just to get yourself immersed into the entire world of the language. Another thing that can help you get started is using language apps such as Duolingo. This is a good way to kind of give you a head start on the language so you don't feel like you're just starting from scratch. It's also really, really important to focus on pronunciation during this stage. The third thing that I found important was that you really, really, really need to be motivated. According to a few studies that I read, having motivation will help you learn a secondary language much, much faster than if you don't. So be motivated. Maybe try setting a goal for yourself, like before I go to France in 5 years, I want to learn how to speak French. The fourth most important thing to learning a secondary language would be learning how to process the language. This is, I think, where I struggle the most. I know a lot of Spanish, but it's hard for me to process when people are speaking it. So kind of breaking it down and understanding when people are speaking the language, exactly what they're saying, will help you learn. So it's really important to make sure that you recognize the language that you're trying to learn. This can be really difficult, but it's super important. Some people struggle with the auditory part of learning a secondary language, but you can get past this. If you just focus on recognizing key indicators in the way that they say things, eventually you'll be able to process the language properly. And this will help a lot in your language learning journey. The fifth thing that I found a lot of people used to help learn a secondary language was I am always sick. I'm so sorry. The fifth thing that I found that helped a lot of people learn secondary language was kind of taking it back to when they were younger, learning things as a child. So this means looking at childhood books, and maybe a childhood book that you know really well, and relearning it in the language, or maybe old history books for people that are in elementary, reading them in a secondary language that you're trying to learn. A lot of people find an interesting connection between learning as an adult and kind of taking it back to when they were a kid. It's a good way to kind of start picking up on the language. So now during the second phase of my research, I conducted interviews with a few people, and from these interviews, I deduced that the main and most important factor to learning a secondary language is having motivation. Let me explain. The first person I interviewed was my doctor from back home, Grace, who migrated from the Philippines when she was younger in order to further her medical career, because she kind of reached about the max that she could get in the Philippines, and she wanted to take it further. So she decided to move to New York City when she was, I believe, 25 years old, around that age. The thing with Grace is she never wanted to learn English. Like, she had no desire to, because when she was in school, she did good in every single class except for one that taught English. That was the only class that she didn't do well in, because for whatever reason, she just couldn't understand the language. This caused her to have no desire to ever move to America, nothing like that. Like, everyone would be like, oh, you should go to America, yada yada, and she'd be like, nope, not happening. But then she reached the point where she realized she kind of had to. So that's when she was ultimately able to learn. And for her, a big part of that was basically just jumping into it, because she started learning while she was still in the Philippines and had maybe like the basic understanding, but not a really great one when she came here. And she had a lot to learn. But just being in the environment, she was immersed into American culture and surrounded by English-speaking people, and she just started picking up on things. It kind of forced her to learn. This was prior to the internet, so a huge part of her learning journey for her involved using workbooks, reading books, watching films, and speaking with her coworkers. She said her coworkers helped her a lot with learning a secondary language because they were understanding of her struggle and really helpful. She said that the main thing that helped her learn, though, was just a necessity. She had no choice, and because of that, she learned. Now, if you look on the other side of the coin, I have another friend who's learning French right now, and the main reason that she is choosing to learn is because she has a stepmother that is from France and speaks it fluently, and as a result of this, they've been to French multiple times, and she's fallen in love with the country and the culture. And she just wanted to learn the language, so maybe one day she can live there for a little bit. When it came to learning a secondary language for her, she found that school and formal education just did not work well with her learning. So she decided to just teach herself. She started with Duolingo. She's very proud of her 732-day Duolingo streak, and so I'll be happy to let you know about it if you ask. And she would speak with her stepmother in French all the time. She started reading books in French, watching movies in French, she would go back and reread childhood books in French. She said that helped her a lot. She would also try to think of the French equivalent to every object that she saw, and she said that thinking in French is also something that she does all the time, and so far it's been helping her quite a bit. She said she really started to make drastic improvements once she set the goal of becoming proficient in French before she goes there again. She said that they're taking a trip to France next summer, and she wants to be able to speak with the locals by then. So this really accelerated her learning because she started taking it more seriously, because now there's an exact date or goal for her to reach for. So having a goal, being motivated, these seem to be the main things that help people out when it comes to learning a secondary language. If you're not motivated, you're not going to learn. So I decided to put this theory to the test by conducting my own little experiment with my friends. I took 4 of my friends randomly and challenged them to attempt and learn Japanese. None of them know any Japanese, by the way, not even a lick. Maybe they might watch anime, but that's the most Japanese that they'll be exposed to. I challenged them to all attempt to learn Japanese using different methods. Each of them could only study for 30 minutes for 5 days straight. Friend 1 was learning by speaking with a native Japanese speaker. Friend 2 was learning through the media. Friend 3 was learning by taking a Japanese Duolingo course. And finally, friend number 4 was just simply given a motivation. I basically just gave her an incentive to learn better than everyone else by telling her that if she scored best on the proficiency test that they all had to take at the end, I'd give her $20. My hypothesis that my friend with the motivation would score best ended up being correct. At the end, when they took the proficiency exams, as you can see, no one really ended up doing well because, how much can you learn in 5 days, right? But my friend who had the motivation, friend number 4, ended up scoring the highest by far. She scored just over 40%. So at the end of the day, the self-directed learning project showed me that if I want to learn Spanish, I'm going to have to be a little bit more motivated. So this whole experience showed me how important motivation is in learning a secondary language, and it has inspired me to set a goal myself. By the time I graduate, I want to be proficient in speaking Spanish. I'm going to start taking the advice that I've showed you guys today, and we'll see if I learn. Hopefully by the time I graduate, I'll be able to take a trip to some Spanish-speaking country and speak with everyone else. But we'll see. That's my goal. Anyways, that's my time. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. I know I really enjoyed making it, this entire process. It's been so fun for me. So I hope that maybe you out there back home are able to take some of this advice and successfully learn a secondary language.